Yeah, I think we can start. Only Sherry has not joined us. It's 4:30 a.m. in New York. Probably she'll join us in a couple of minutes. And Louis will join us 1 hour later. He's also joining us from New York. I think we can start.
Sure, sir. So, hello everyone. Welcome to the talk hosted by Peace XLRI. I hope I'm audible.
Yes.
Yes, you were.
Hi. So, welcome to the talk hosted by Peace XLRI. We are joining from both Zoom as well as YouTube Live. So, I welcome all the panelists here while we are going to talk about the global perspectives on climate action and sustainability. So, firstly, we have Amitabh Shah with us, who is a founder of YUVA Unstoppable and a Yale MBA graduate. He also leads one of the India's largest NGOs, which has impacted over 5 million children across 7,000 government schools. He is also focused on education, infrastructure, and solar power. And he has also represented the Indian government as a delegate of COP29, advancing climate action globally. He's joining us from Ahmedabad, India. Next, I would welcome Anum Feroz. Hi, ma'am. So she's a development professional with the UNDP Pakistan, and she specializes in sustainable development and climate advocacy. As a COP speaker, she also champions the flood recovery strategies and social equity, engaging diverse stakeholders to empower vulnerable communities. Her expertise lies in research, communications, and fostering resilience through innovative solutions. She's joining us from Islamabad, Pakistan. Welcome to the talk, ma'am. Then we have Sherry Sandor Kelly, who is the Director of Sustainability and Communications at Sinclair and Partners. And she also happens to be a COP29 delegate and a curator for Extreme Hangout. She leverages extensive media expertise to drive strategic solutions and promote biodiversity projects and supports the indigenous communities, including through her consulting roles with ACOFE and AJ Bird First Nations. She will be joining us from New York, USA. Next, I welcome to the talk Saikat Das. He is an experienced energy and sustainability professional who manages the offshore energy projects at FoundOcean, aligning them with the net zero goals. With roles as Youngo Energy coordinator and COP delegate, they also advocate for policy innovation and they also mentor green startups, leveraging expertise in the ESG as well as offshore construction and sustainable development. He's joining us from Edinburgh, UK. Welcome, sir.
Next up, we have Gloria Loriya. She is an indigenous leader from Kenya and CEO of Impact Generation Africa, advocates for youth, women, and indigenous right and climate action. She's joining us from Edinburgh. Next, we have Dr. Gurpreet Choudhary, assistant professor at RGNIDY, Chandigarh. His specialization in governance, reform, sustainable development, and climate advocacy. As a youth delegate for India at COP, he contributes to global climate discussions. He's joining us from Chandigarh. Next up, finally, we have Sakshi Krishna, a Bangalore-based advocate and founder of My Earth, champions climate justice, loss and damage, a UNFCCC COP29 delegate. She has partnered with global organizations like WWF and UNSDSN, empowering 15,000 plus participants globally. So she is joining us from Bangalore, India. Prateek, can we move forward with the discussion?
Thank you so much for the introductions, and thank you everyone for joining us. I mean, we have people from all across the globe joining us. I think in UK it's right now 9:30. In Pakistan, I think it will be 2:30, and we'll have two speakers joining us from New York, where it's right now 4:30. So thank you everyone so much. And I had the pleasure of meeting all of you at COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan. So that is where I actually came to meet you all. So if we can start off by your personal experience at COP29, I mean, what were your learnings and takeaways, and how was your personal experience? And finally, also dwell a bit on the deal that was accepted by parties. I mean, what is your take on that? So if you can start with Amitabh.
Very happy to. Nice to be here, and good afternoon from Ahmedabad. So for me, this was my first COP29, and one thing that stood out for me was that how so many people cared. So for me, it was a very positive story to see session after session, panel after panel, all the negotiations that were going on. Everyone was trying to create a better world for now and for the future. So that is something that stood out to me, that uh, people are trying to bridge the gap and make it a more sustainable uh, world where all of us can live happier with less pollution, with cleaner rivers, with greener cities, with more the kind of innovative products which are outlined over there, which could help, make this become a reality. The number of young people who had come from all over the world. All of this was very, very inspiring for me. So I was uh, looking at it from that lens, that there is compassion and there is an intent to make a difference. Thanks, Prateek.
Sure. That's a great insight. So, Anum, what was your take on the negotiations at COP? Or what was your personal experience? You were also representing the Pakistan government there.
Yeah, thank you, Prateek. I hope I'm audible to everyone.
Yes.
So yeah, I think again for me it was my first COP. So I wouldn't say it was overwhelming, but of course, I was joining towards the end, probably the last few days of the COP. But to understand the entire process, and as a young development professional, you get to interact and meet people, and you want to know much more about in terms of why the global community has gathered together, what are the exact areas where we want commitments or what we want, especially coming from a country which is far more vulnerable to climate change. We're like really looking forward for some really strong commitments, not just for Pakistan, but of course for the entire global south, I would say, for that matter. So I mean, yeah, I think a lot of positive things also, like to see people eager to, like, being vocal for more climate action, for increased amount of climate finance, especially towards the developing countries, which I felt like had a very strong representation in this global platform, where they could just speak very openly in terms of the vulnerabilities that they have, where they could represent the vulnerable communities back home who have been affected one way or the other. One example would be for us in Pakistan, when we had a very recent devastating 2022 floods, which was like probably one of the biggest examples that we could set at stage on ground and talk about it, and convince the parties to pay attention and focus towards a goal and a commitment that kind of like satisfies everyone. So of course, yes, it has its pros and cons. A lot needs to be done still. I feel like maybe the commitments weren't too strong, but really hoping that coming forward, moving forward, things will eventually become better. So yeah, this was my first COP, so still learning, looking forward to the upcoming ones. Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
Makes sense. So, Saikat, coming to you, I believe this was your fourth COP. And you were representing both the Youngo Energy Working Committee and the European Young Engineer in the capacity of Senior Vice President, and you also specialize in climate finance. So what was, and I believe you were there for the entire 2 weeks till this, and actually extended to for 2 weeks till Sunday. So what was your own experience, personal experience that you had, and how do you say the final deal? I mean, what would your perspective be on the final deal that was negotiated and agreed upon?
Well, thank you first of all for having me here, amazing panelists, and also the speakers. Yes, it was my fourth COP since 4 years. I've seen a gradual expansion in participation, mostly from at least the vulnerable communities that we really want, and from the youth as well. The voice really matters from each corner of the world. There is a leverage of including all the policies and developments from entire parties, but of course, at the end, when you say about COP29 especially, there was a lag of consensus at the end. The draft was not accepted basically, which was finalized. So it was being accepted with few countries. I would say the global, not few of the developed countries, but most of the parties, most of the groups like G77, we have the LNDCs, those were like neglected and not properly initiated. I guess I see also saw that India uh, had a stamp at the end that they said that it was not a proper transparency and distributed commitment that has been done by the COP presidency. Uh, 300 billion annually by 2035. You can see that, okay, it has been done from 100 billion targets, which was in 2010, I guess. And it was targeted until 2020, which will be paid. But it was being paid in 2022, if I'm not wrong. But then where is the inflation? There is no inflation that has been counted. There is no that has been counted with the NDCs. There is no there is the recent development contribution. In total, we need like 2 trillion annually for the developing nations, and we only have 300 billion annually by 2035. So I don't know how the gap will be fulfilled, but we are quite optimistic as we always go to the COP. That is why COP, when we go out together, we speak to each other. All the nations are collectively, advocating for the greater good of ours. So yes, definitely being in COP is different, experience, and with this kind of people, like-minded people here as well, it could be there.
Thank you so much, Saikat. Coming to you, Gloria, you specialize in the indigenous rights. You are yourself representing them from Kenya. You also have expertise in agriculture. How was your own COP experience, and how do you deal the final deal, but also specifics to indigenous community and agriculture policies were agreed upon at COP29?
Thank you so much, Prateek. I think for me, especially as the CEO of my organization, Impact Generation Africa, we are so keen on ensuring the indigenous community, which is really not so considered in these conversations, that our knowledge as indigenous people is put into practice. We are trying to put it out there that indigenous knowledge is such a diverse hub that should be recognized in the climate action spaces. And I always tell even my own community, we put a lot of efforts as indigenous people, like basically 85% of biodiversity is being taken care of by the indigenous people, but 5% of this is being supported by 5% of the benefits comes to them, or is not well recognized. And you heard the other day, one of the developed countries was even hitting, there's no necessary, why should indigenous knowledge be considered into this? It's not of importance. So at the grassroots levels, as Impact Generation Africa, we are trying to create this and put it into practical solutions by ensuring there's intergenerational conversations between the youth and the elders. We also have we're ensuring like capacity trainings to both women at the grassroots levels, to the youth themselves. We're also collaborating so closely within county government. In Kenya, we work as counties. So county government of West Pokot particularly is where most of our projects are currently. And we also work closely with the pastoralists themselves to ensuring that as they being at the tables, where especially with the Department of Climate Change and Environment, they are being there to put their voices on the table so that they are not left behind. We're also trying to ensure that women who are so much hit by this are also being on the discussions. We're also supporting them on supporting initiatives like kitchen gardens for them, because Impact Generation Africa works in northern part of Kenya, so arid, and we face prolonged droughts most of the times in these areas. So those are some of the ways that we're doing this as Impact Generation Africa.
Thank you so much, Gloria. Gurpreet, coming to you, as an academician, as a professor and an official youth delegate from Government of India, how was your experience at COP29, and what all did you bring back from there, and what all do you think one should look at when we look at the next COP?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Prateek, and thank you for calling here. It's an honor to be part of this esteemed panel. People who are all came back from COP29 and so excited and visioned for the climate change. So, as part of the COP29 this year at Baku, last year at Baku. So it was nice, but if we see about the exposures and new things like for the climate change, the Europe is leading in the renewable energy sector. As a few of my, I also get to know that Saikat is from I think UK area. So countries in Europe are leading in circular economy, like Germany and Netherlands have been leading in waste management and recycling efforts for the the past even 2 decades. But we are still lacking in those, and we're still in India. We are discussing on the things like how to do waste segregation, how to do waste management, but we can learn from there. So this was why new for me. Like similarly, ocean health. Australia is focusing at Australia, Federation Pavilion. I got to know that how Australia is working for ocean well-being, animals under the ocean. So similarly, many people from India like sustainability, like in Himalayas, tribal groups, they are from last 3 to 4 decades, even back that we don't know, they are focusing and sustaining with the limited resources, and they are developing new things, and they are sustaining their lives and families from last. So these are the new from other countries and India. Similarly, there was another zone over there where MNCs, multinational corporates are also there, which are, keen, interested, and their focus is shifting not only to the, the exploiting resources, but also contributing back to the society. Like ESG is one area, environmental social governance standards, right? Deloitte, EY was there. So they were creating carbon credit mechanisms, and they're focusing more on this. So these kind of things are the positives that we can say for the climate change purpose. But on the other side, as Saket already mentioned, that in 2009 it was said that $100 billion should be given to the developing countries from 2011 to 2020. But somehow in 2015 at COP21, it has been extended to 2025. Now this year we have to come up with a new, you know, new quantitative climate finance. So, but we lacked to attain that. It was only decided at $300 billion, but UN already mentioned that developing nations need at least $5 trillion per year to adapt the and the mitigation obligations that we should give to them. But still we are lacking, right? So also, what kind of finance they are giving, there also quality of finance is an issue. Like to 2011 to 2020, 5% of that total 100% they gave, 5% are those which are not to given back. Other 61 are the given was as a loans debt. Similarly, note at paper place from 2019 to 2023, 75% of this finance, climate finance, was invested in US, Europe, these regions, global north, where it was expected to deliver in global south. So there are major issues. So now till 2035, they will only give 300 billion. India strongly denied and objected this also over there. So this is the mix of my experience over there. So let's see how things go. So thank you.
Thank you, Gurpreet. So we have Sherry joining us. She's actually joining us from New York, where it's, as I told you, for under it will be 5 a.m. in morning. Thank you so much, Sherry, for joining us. If we can come to you, how was your COP29 experience, and what all did you take away, both in terms of the deal that was finalized and your own personal experience there?
Morning, Prateek. Thank you for having me. Good morning from cold New York. Well, my experience at COP29 was different than most because I was at the Green Zone at Extreme Hangout. So I had curated quite a few panels, one directed on the Great Green Wall in the Sahel, The problem with that was that there was a big blowback for the financing that went into the Great Green Wall. Some were questioning, if they had said that 17 trillion had been poured into it, and where is the growth and what's going on? And I surmounted it during my experience that there was a lot of economic leakage going on in Africa, in the Sahel region for this project. So that was one. Two, I noticed that, in the green zone, there was a lot of, what do I call it? I don't even know what to call it.
I think Sherry's internet is unstable. I think we might have lost her. Okay. Once we get Sherry back, we'll let her continue with the thoughts. Sakshi, coming to you. You are a lawyer and expert on climate finance and climate policy. So, and you were also there at Biodiversity COP16 just a week before in Cali, Colombia. So what was your take from COP29, and how do you integrate, what was your experience in the Biodiversity COP versus the climate COP?
Thank you so much for having me. For me, at both COPs, the energy was sort of a mix of hope and the sense of urgency. And just being amidst all the policymakers and activists and young people from all over the world was overwhelming and inspiring and also sobering. It, on one hand, it sort of felt like there was space and potential for some innovative ideas and solutions to tackle the biodiversity and the climate crisis. But on the other hand, it also sort of gave us the reminder that there is how little of time left to take action in terms of both biodiversity and climate change. What struck me the most at both these COPs was how representation from the global south has increased, especially India at the climate COP, which sort of highlights the disproportionate effects of climate change on vulnerable communities and how these communities have to really be there to represent their voices and bring out their opinions and spotlight their issues. And personally, I sort of walked away with COP with some sort of cautious optimism. And it also showed me that collaboration is possible, and it reinforced my belief that implementation at the local, national, and regional level is really necessary, and that's where the challenge lies. And my take on the last NCQG goal, which is the new collective quantified goal, which sort of gives a financial target for climate action from all the countries. It was sort of getting all the countries to agree to come take a step forward, especially in recognizing the need for more ambitious funding that caters to both mitigation and adaptation. Although loss and damage was not highlighted that much, I think it sort of is understood the fact that the urgency is there and the conversations are building. And it's also another important aspect is for countries like India, loss and damage is really critical. And we're already experiencing the impacts of climate change, from erratic monsoons to the devastating floods. So while the funding and the conversations around funding and climate finance are very promising, we sort of need to build robust mechanisms to ensure that the marginalized and the vulnerable communities sort of see the tangible benefits from these agreements.
Okay. And just adding on to the point, you were also the front face of the civil society protest that happened after the first draft, as it was highlighted in the Guardian article. So how was the kind of the protest element your experience in COP29?
I mean, it was sort of a last minute action collectively taken by the civil societies. It was an understanding, and I'm glad that we had the opportunity to sort of build that action at COP while everyone was deliberating and everyone was negotiating. It was there wasn't anything that we could have done apart from what we looked out to say and so carry out the message in a friendly manner and in an allowed and a controlled manner. And I'm glad it got the media attention, and I'm glad the funding was come they gave out a bigger number, but it was, although it was not the number that everyone was advocating for and everyone requires at this stage, but it was still welcome. Although India did object, and I'm glad they did. I think global South countries need to take the forefront in advocating for their needs at the national levels.
Thank you so much. Sherry, are you able to join us back and continue with your thoughts? I'm not sure if she is able to. Okay, so we'll continue forward. So Amitabh, I will like to know about YUVA Unstoppable, the 2 decades journey that has had, and kind of the millions of young life that has touched, and also the sustainability practices and initiatives that it has taken part in.
Sure. Thanks, Prateek. So, in the ancient Indian wisdom, it used to be that one son is for business and second is for society. So my brother went to Harvard Business School and started a very successful legal tech firm. I went to Yale for my MBA and declined a Wall Street offer with JP Morgan to come back and work on the real streets of India. Basically, we started out in a very simple way that everyone will give 2 hours a week of their time to go and teach math, science, dance, music, English in a government school close to them. You could be working at HDFC, IBM, Google, Microsoft, or you could be a doctor, lawyer, housewife, a college student. But 2 hours a week, I thought anyone can give. And very quickly, Prateek, we mobilized about 150,000 volunteers across the country. And they would come to us and say that for 300 girls, there's just one bathroom. The dishwashing, drinking, hand washing is 2 faucets of water. The electricity goes away. There's no solar. There's no smart classrooms to teach kids through audio visuals, play areas, proper training of the teachers. Can we do something about this? And around that time is when Prime Minister was inspiring the country with Clean India and Digital India movement. And I'm happy to share that we've now been able to transform almost 7,000 government schools, upgrade them with improved sanitation technology, solar, water harvesting. As per London School of Economics, the overall maths and science in the schools have gone up almost 4 times. The attendance has improved by 15%. And also, we have a large-scale scholarship program. So, dhobi ke bache, rickshaw wala ke bache, auto wala ke bache, kids who might have lost their parents, anyone who gets more than 80% the 10th or 12th, we help them become a doctor, lawyer, engineer, chartered accountant, whatever their heart desires. More than 100 kids we are supporting in IITs right now, this year itself. Many kids are working in Goldman Sachs, Axis Bank. They've become cardiologists, gynecologists, surgeons. And now they are paying it forward. They're saying we would like to help 5 other kids because our parents are okay to live in a 12 by 12. They're used to it. So we'll build a house after 3-4 years. First, we want to help other children. And then we are also into agroforestry to help, improve farmers' livelihood and also kind of help with a more greener world. This year, we plan on planting about 1 crore trees. Also, we are envisioning projects like, give lungs to Bombay and Delhi with large-scale tree plantation. Skilling is another big part of what YUVA Unstoppable does. So it's been a blessing. It's been a real joy and a real blessing to be doing this. And close to $100 million we have already implemented with various partners from Bank of America, Disney, HDFC, Gates Foundation. KPMG does all of our audits. So we wanted to build an organization which was very professionally run, where the impact measurement and sustainability was a key part of it. Because I feel India needs more organizations which can implement at scale. So thank you, Prateek. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And it's an amazing work that YUVA Unstoppable is doing.
Thank you.
So, Anum, coming to you, both as your experience of working in UNDP in Pakistan, what do you think innovative solutions are being explored to make renewable energy more accessible and affordable there? And as you mentioned just in your first statement, that Pakistan definitely is one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change. And we I think each year we hear of a huge tragedy that happens in Pakistan affecting, I would say, tens and hundreds of millions of people.
Yeah, I got your question, but sorry, just there was a little bit of lag in it. So I mean,
Okay.
I'm hoping basically it's more about innovation and renewable energy and how Pakistan is basically coping with that.
Sure. And your experience also as an UNDP
Right.
professional.
So, oh yeah, okay, great. So thank you, Prateek, again for your question. Well, to start off with, as my experience with UNDP, it's been more than a year and a half. I have been working with their flood recovery program here in Pakistan. I was before that working on a similar portfolio with WHO on the flood recovery, the 2022 floods that happened in Pakistan, but more from a relief point of view. Well, with UNDP, there are like sustainable development when it comes to especially the flood affected communities in Pakistan. And overall, the UNDP works for the development of people whenever, however possible, in terms of recovery and resilience throughout across the country and of course globally as well. When I talk about innovation, and I feel like innovation and sustainability kind of goes hand in hand, and especially with this advancing world. I think it plays a very crucial role in terms of driving the progress and sustainability, and all the innovative approaches in itself are they play a very effective or efficient role and in terms of sustainable solutions to the contemporary challenges. How Pakistan is basically dealing with that, especially when it comes to renewable energy sector. Well, because Pakistan, like I said earlier as well, is one of the most vulnerable countries when it comes to climate change. And every year there is one way or another disaster or some devastating, catastrophe and all that we have to face. But based on that, of course, Pakistan is also advancing in terms of its strategies, like climate strategies or climate policies, and trying to come up with many innovative approaches to ensure long-term resilience and sustainability within the communities. And some of the approaches that I have been personally, directly been working on certain projects that we have already implemented and that we are currently now in the phase of implementing, which kind of involves a community-led approach, involving the communities in certain, these renewable energy sort of projects. Either it's solar energy, going into the remote areas and implementing off-grid solar systems to power schools or health facilities. And then working with the agricultural farmers and trying to build more climate resilient agriculture practices, providing them with solar solutions, solar powered water pumps combined with drip irrigation systems. So all of these practices are basically you're also doing the capacity building, you're building, you're giving the opportunity, you're including the community, and you're just providing them this affordability as well, because it's more cost efficient. There's less operational cost with the solar panels and all, and also at the same time, it kind of is also climate friendly, reduces the greenhouse gas emissions, it eliminates the the reliance on the fossil fuels as well. And at the same time, for example, in agriculture sectors, the farmers, their incomes also kind of goes up by lowering the input costs, and in overall improves their yield, overall crop yield as well. And then at the same time, of course, the public private partnership plays a very important role in
Okay. I think
the solar solution product or maker that Pakistan has recently developed in capacity to produce around 11,000 megawatts of electricity under this project, to wind farms, to streamline the infrastructure and to reduce the cost overall. And then we have biogas energy for households in remote areas of Pakistan where
Anum, I think your connection is a bit unstable. I mean,
we're using the organic waste to convert gas where there's no less or no availability of electricity, or those off-grid communities basically. So in an overall, if I try to explain, I feel like Pakistan is using all of these innovative approaches one way or another in the renewable energy sector, trying to make people more inclined towards renewable energy than and moving from the non-renewable energy sources, trying to reduce its greenhouse gas emission impact, and as well as at the same time trying to involve the communities, so giving them the chance to come in and take ownership, right, to build forward better, which is motto for you as well as UNDP, to build forward better and for better, and like including everyone, for a more progressive and sustainable future for all. So yeah, I believe that's the overall approach for Pakistan and also for my work in UNDP.
Sure. Thank you so much. So I think we have Sherry back. So say, Sherry, if you can just continue, you were telling us about being the curator of the Extreme Hangouts in the Green Zone.
Yeah. Yes. Hi. I think should I keep my video on? I think it keeps going in and out. I don't know. Let's just do. It might be better. Okay. Okay. So let me continue. So the Great Green Wall for me, as I was at COP29, I learned that it was a big bust, because you believe in something so much, and when you get to COP and everyone else is there, and you hear everyone else's take on it, you say, oh wow. So then so Great Green Wall, that was done on Friday. We move on to the next week. And the next week was, for me, because working in sustainability and communications and where I've come from, some of my work has been in sustainable tourism, and tourism, is a giant GDP in this world. Tourism has the ability to impact and also ruin other people's lives, in my opinion. Because when people come to a country, they're supposed to be visiting and embracing the cultures, and my take is that you enhance the communities you visit. You don't ruin it. You don't act like it's your vacation spot. So we did another panel with Fin Partners, which is a global media firm, and I wrote a speech for the managing partner, Debbie Flynn, and it was called how to ensure tourism helps, not harms, nature, and what is the role of media and sustainability, right? So we talked about that because tourism is such a driving force, we need to emphasize areas that actually are community based, that give back to the community, that are regenerative economies, and that have an eco-conscious modem to it, and to not actually emphasize over tourist places. So that was two, and the other one was a greenwashing panel on a film called Headwind 21 about the effects of onshore wind farms that were being built in Sweden, and that were having hectares of land that were being taken illegally. And one of my friends, Alexander Pohl, he did this great movie with Marin Pols, this great documentary filmmaker, and it encountered a lot of meaningful asks. Marin Pohl went up to Ingmar Renshag and had said to him, what are we doing here? And Ingmar was like, well, we don't really have time to pick new rulers or presidents to do this whole climate change kind of switch, because what we're talking about is a paradigm shift, right? We're talking about how do we change our views in life? How do we say enough is enough, right? How do we say we are at the tipping point in this world of either we do good things or we don't do good things, right? Either we're going to die or we're not going to die. And to me, when we say climate change, I mean, I think we should change. And I've always said this. I said this back in 2022. I said, listen, the Earth will always be here, right? It's always been here. The planet has always been here. The problem is, are we going to be here? That's what I'm saying. Are the humans really going to be here? And we need to save ourselves. And at the end of the day, we need to be asking the hard questions of what are we doing really with green technology, right? What are we doing with carbon capture? Does it really work? Is it going to work, right? I mean, we've got wind farms. Why are we putting wind farms in the ocean when the ocean has already had so much problems there already.
Sherry, sorry to cut you off, but I definitely appreciate your perspective.
No,
We'll
that's okay.
definitely be coming to that. We'll be definitely coming to that. So we definitely
Very
got
good.
an idea of your
Very good.
experience at COP29. Okay, thank you so much.
Good.
Okay, so Saikat, coming to you, based on your energy expertise that you have, which renewable sources would you say are the most feasible in general for the globe to drive towards a cleaner future, and also in the context of India, which one should we focus on? And also in the last couple of years, especially after COVID, nuclear has made a big comeback. So what's your take on that?
Well, that's really a broader question, I would say, but I won't make it really complicated or too technical, but I'll go towards what the feasibilities are. Mostly, if you see, it always depends on the region. In generations or um, compatibility of the energy, it depends on where we're getting from. So, if I'm speaking about global north, most of the countries are deprived of sun, right? Like we don't have sun here, so the capacity factor would be really less. If we're speaking about the Gulf region, they have like quite a really intensive solar radiations, which can be then put forward for solar energies. India as well is really good in solar energies. But if I speak about hydro energy in Saudi, then there will be a problem because they don't have like proper aquifers or reservoirs. If I speak hydros in India and then region where Himalayas and valleys are there, it is compatible because we have been really lucky to have hydropower as a really good source of electricity for our base load for the grids. So see, this question is really defined about the region as well. But I would rather say like the whole like world is moving ahead towards a greater greener and more renewables. So of course, like solar, wind, geothermal, um, hydro. In fact, the hydrogen is also like going booming day by day. India has a really good policies for green hydrogen and blue hydrogen as well. Um, Hydrogen is not like a new topic, like we use hydrogen so far as in some space explorations as well previously, but it was not properly expedited towards the market capacity buildings and how to usage in normal day-to-day lives. Mostly, of course, we don't have infrastructure for transportations and usual production as well, big productions. So I would say this question is like really variable. But if I say in terms of India, India is doing amazing in terms of some policies, but I see a lack in efficiency in terms of what is the long-term goals and the short-term goals. People, I think, just don't know as well that we have a long-term goal plan of India. This plan is submitted, I guess, like 2 years or yeah, during the last NDC submissions as well. So in that submission, you can literally see the all the policies, what of the policies we have. I think most of the policies are inclined with towards the NDCs that have been submitted. So few of the points of NDCs are we have to deprive of our coal uh, generated electricity by less than 50% by 2030, which I see somewhat really contradicting towards the recent policies that we have. As you see this, if we shift from coal to any other resources, that means we have to shift the whole entire grids. So our grid is like old grids. All of them are like old grids, and those are not compatible enough with our with the renewables that we have. I think India has more than 23% renewable generations and capacity for ongoing projects. The rooftop solar is really good in terms of policy, recent government policy. Hydrogen path is really good as well. Mostly, a lot of policies are there for the normal people who are like BPL as well, the below poverty, and of course above the average poverty level as well. For the common people, they have amazing certain tariffs, subsidies. The most important is people don't know about it. In India, most of the people don't know about it. Government literally give them a lot of subsidies in terms of um, installation in their houses as well, rooftop, or if you have like proper agriculture, you can like convert that agricultural land into proper renewable energy pumped and agro-based startups. So people don't know about that. So I guess government have to work on the communication base, like how to like send those message to common people who really wants them. In terms of nuclear that you asked, of course, India is looking ahead for few nuclear reactors, which are the SMRs. We can say the small medium reactors. They are moving ahead towards um, nuclear infrastructure. And it will take time. It will take time. We won't have time according to us, according to many research papers, according to many articles, and in terms of IPCC as well. But if I say, as per India and many other countries which are developing, have to be justified, like we call it just transition. So if we just transition from having like coal to having like non infrastructure, then what will happen to the people, right? So we have to also think about that transition, that equity, just not like equality. Equality is like, I'm giving same amount of stuff to you and me as well, but your equality is different from me, right? So it has to be like properly equitable. So this is what the government has to be look on. But in terms of electricity generation, coal, I think, I guess right now is coal 65% or something, which is transitioning away slowly. We need more wafers and interns as well for solar. So I think 2022 we have exported most of the wafers from, like, not most, like 100% of the wafers which is used for solar panel from China. So we need our own capacity as well. So if we do demand side management, we have to also see the supply side management. If we get dependent on other countries, it will be like really difficult for us to get independent as well. So I guess, for me, most important, I would really say that I really want to see as a front foot in terms of production, generation, and supply chain. Three things.
Yeah, thank you so much, Saikat, for your insight. So, Gloria, your expertise is also in agriculture policies. So, given the erratic climate changes that we are seeing, how do countries, especially in the global south, take measures to ensure food security?
Thank you so much, Prateek. I think for the global south, in these climate change issues, the most issues that affect us are flooding and droughts. And so I think, like Saikat said, every region have different ways of coping with these effects. So first, also, we need to understand that there's a growing population currently too. And as much as there's climate change, there's a growing population and everyone wants to ensure food demands are met. So how do we ensure that this is effectively met? First, we need all communities in global south need to ensure that there's crop diversification, of course, ensuring that they plant crops that really adapt to the climatic conditions. For example, for those in the dry areas, ensuring that they plant more of drought-resistant crops. And then there's also a need of embracing as indigenous communities, for example, I say there's need to really embrace traditional crops in our local ecosystem, because that is where they match fit for this. And then also there's need to ensure more agroecological practices that really do not put pressure on the land, ensuring, for example, like my own organization, for example, we're really insisting on having sunken beds, for example, encouraging mulching for in the farms among these women groups or among the farmers themselves. We also encouraging them to adopt alternative livelihoods. For example, coming from a pastoralist community, most of us have grown up, or we believe that having a lot of cattle is really key. But then we tend to believe too, a lot of cattle put pressure amidst this drought to look for pasture and water, and makes it even more harder for them. So encouraging alternative livelihoods like beekeeping, for example, as my organization, is one thing that we're really encouraging on. And it is even much it requires less labor even for women themselves, and diversified incomes for them. They can even do more of kitchen gardens, incorporating with these practices that I'm talking about. And then also, with speaking of ensuring we have policies that are so holistic in all manner, supporting local production of foods for farmers, and local production of food for these farmers. And then also, we have noticed that it's a gap of youths in agriculture. So currently, I'm really advocating on youths being also embracing agriculture and not looking at it as a dirty job. And most of us are moving into the white collar jobs. But also, when all of us, there's an aging population on this side, when all of us move to this other side, who will feed this growing population? So there's need to also look onto that. And basically, let it be a very holistic approach where we're looking at sustainable practices, policies that incorporate much better in the food systems for all of us. And then there's another thing that I always say, even I know in this global south, organizations like NGOs are there. They really need to look onto when they bring projects into these communities to scale up their food productions, for example, or even on issues of water management for areas that have less water. Because with less water, you can't really do much on farming. So we need to ensure that even as NGOs bring in projects that are really can be long-term to these communities, not just a one-time thing that just comes for a short period of time. And then or bringing projects that are just a short and not explaining to the communities how to better or manage this water, how to ensure that there is no, let's say on farming, on tillage, they don't put using a lot of machines, for example, on the farm that really distracts the soil, causing disability or causing this soil not being too healthy for agriculture, for example. So there's need to be holistic in all manner, starting from the grassroots level and the people understanding what is the need. The national levels, the global at the global level, policies are well integrated to fit everyone in the food system. Thank you.
Sure. I think that's a great insight, and that is, I think, a very critical key for the global south to ensure the food security of the population, I think. Okay, Gurpreet, coming to you and your experience and expertise in governance systems. What are the key differences that you normally observe among sustainability governance amongst nations and different cultures that we observe? Yeah. Gurpreet, are you here? Okay, I think we'll come to Gurpreet. So Sakshi, coming to you. As a legal background professional with background in environmental advocacy, how does legal framework and policy interventions accelerate global transition from fuels to renewable energy, fossil fuels to renewable energy?
Thank you so much for that question. The legal frameworks in India sort of play a very important role in sort of shaping the energy transitions. For example, India's Electricity Act could mandate a higher share of renewable energy in the grid. Policies like feed-in tariffs, which sort of guarantee the producers of renewable energy a fixed rate for their power, can drive investment in that sector. And also at an international level, treaties should sort of hold countries accountable for phasing out fossil fuel and fossil fuel subsidies, not just use it around in plain text or use it as a buzzword. And domestically, we need to understand financial incentives for rooftop solar installations and wind farms. And all of this needs to happen at a fast tracking pace, and the green projects under single window clearances, while also ensuring rigorous environmental impact assessments that sort of balances the law that can help strike. And the legal instruments can also sort of foster innovation, if you look at it that way. Offering tax benefits to startups in the clean energy space, or creating carbon credits that industries can trade, can make renewables economically viable. In essence, what I'm trying to say is legal frameworks should not only help people set ambitious targets, but it also sort of has to act like a tool to remove barriers to make those targets achievable.
Okay, sure. We are getting a couple of questions on YouTube Live also. Sakshi, I'd like you to address the first one, which Megha Malela asks. What were the key obstacles encountered during the negotiations at COP29, and how do you think they were addressed?
So the key challenges I'd say that were encountered at the COP negotiations was sort of the disagreement between the global north and the global south in terms of how much funding has to go into climate action. And also another aspect is again on accountability on adaptation, mitigation, and loss and damage. Countries like Canada, US sort of downplayed their responsibility and how much they owe to the global south. I wouldn't say that there wasn't action, but it wasn't at an accelerated sort of rate that the global south is expecting the global north to take accountability. I'm sorry, I didn't get the second part of the question.
Yeah, and how were they addressed? I mean, whatever the obstacles that were encountered.
Yeah, so I think countries and countries from the global south are being more welcome in these climate policy discussions than, say, for example, 10 years ago. I think that's a welcome move. And if not, like again, I'd just like to say that if not at the pace that we'd like for them to accelerate action, it is slowly shifting and the narrative is changing. Power is at the vulnerable communities and indigenous communities, and the mere fact that young people are there at these discussions shows that such discussions are welcome. We just have to make sure to make it a point to say that we're just not a media trophy. We also deserve a seat at the table to decide on policies and agree on targets and agree on how you want to monitor and evaluate these targets. So yeah, I think once these aspects set the tone for action, everything else will follow.
Sure. Thank you so much. And actually, we just have Louis joining us from New York, where it is right now 5:30. So I'll ask my co-panelist to please introduce him, my co-host to introduce him.
So, hello everyone. We have Louis Blaustein with us, who is a sustainability consultant and a New York University Stern graduate, who also founded the Green Sports blog and EcoAthletes, which empowered 180 plus athletes to lead climate action. So, leveraging expertise in the marketing and environmental advocacy, he also inspires athletes globally to champion sustainability through the hashtag Climate Comeback Initiative. He has also integrated sports with impactful climate solutions. Welcome to the talk, Lewis.
It's great to
Thank
be here. Thank you for having me. And you know what? You can call me Lou.
Sure. Yeah, thank you so much, Lou. I know you're joining us from New York. Right now it's 5:30. So thank you so much for waking up early on a Sunday morning and joining us.
My pleasure.
Sure. Thank you so much. So I'll like to start about the idea of how EcoAthletes came about. And if you could share some of the EcoAthletes journeys with us who are part of this amazing group.
Sure. So EcoAthletes came about because, as the intro said, I had been writing Green Sports blog going back now almost 12 years. And so, and Green Sports blog covers the growing intersection between green and sports. And so let's say 2015, 2016, 2017, I started to interview athletes who were environmentally active, doing things like beach cleanups and e-waste recycling drives and the like. And I would ask them, so you're doing all these great things. Are you making the connection between those actions and the climate crisis and the climate opportunity? And I would say 9 out of 10 of them would say no. And I'm like, why not? And basically, the same three, I'll call them obstacles or basically fears, came up. It's too sciency, and I don't feel comfortable talking about a scientific topic that I don't know much about. Two, it's too political, and I don't want to get involved or stick my neck out on a political issue, or at least not this one. And three, and this is the one we get most often today, which is I'm going to be branded a hypocrite on social media. because I fly all over the place for my sport, and my professional carbon emissions are through the roof. And I would hear these same fears come up time and again, and I would say to myself, you know what? I know how to overcome these obstacles, or at least push back, or at least neutralize them. And that from there evolved the idea that there needed to be an organization for athletes to get educated and inspired to go, environmentally active athletes and climate curious athletes to get inspired and educated so they can go that last step to lead on climate action. And then your question might also be, well, why athletes? Well, athletes are the most influential humans on the planet. And this is not just me talking. These are data talking. There's a great study from a group called Pantheon that's led by MIT that goes back 100 plus years and looks at all sorts of public figures and their influence. And athletes, no matter the country, anywhere in the world, are number one. And I'm not saying that's a great thing, even though I'm a sports nut. I'm just saying it is. And athletes have led on all manner of issues, from civil rights, women's rights, issues of war and peace, etc. But on climate, they've been on the sidelines. And we can't afford to have them on the sidelines given their influence, excuse me, and given given the urgency and the scale of the problem and the urgency and the scale of the opportunity. So that kind of led, hopefully this wasn't too long of a story, to uh, me to found an organization, EcoAthletes, almost 5 years ago, as a nonprofit with the mission to inspire and coach athletes to lead climate action. And how do we do that? We provide our EcoAthletes champions, which are, as I checked just before I got on, we have 189 as of today, professionals, Olympians, and what we have here in the US, uh, uh, college sports is a huge thing. And so we have college student athletes. But we provide those athletes with the tools to advance from climate curious to climate leader. And I know you asked me about the athletes, but I'm going to take a breath, so you might have another question.
Yeah, sure. No, you can continue with the athletes because we'll actually jump back to other people after this show.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, one of our athletes, is Pragnya Mohan, who is India's #1 triathlete. And she is one of our champions, and she's the first champion from India. And she's an amazing story in her own right. And that's what our champions have. They have inspirational stories. And some are very well known and some are not so well known, but what they have in common are inspirational stories of climate action. So Pragnia has started a nonprofit that I think it's called Ek Beti, Ek Cycle. And it provides bicycles that otherwise would be thrown into landfill to girls and young women so that they have the freedom to go to school, to go to work in her area of India, and then hopefully it'll spread throughout the whole country and maybe beyond. And the environmental or climate benefit of that is that those bikes uh, they don't degrade in landfill because they're being used. And in landfill, if they degrade, they leach out methane, which is 80 to 100 times more powerful a greenhouse gas than CO2. Another champion who I would love to mention is Nafisa Collier. She is one of the top women's basketball players in the world. She came in second in the MVP or most valuable player voting in the WNBA this past season for the Minnesota Lynx. She's a two-time Olympic gold medalist. She from the USA, and she recently, like 2 weeks ago, started a new basketball league here called Unrivaled, which is a 3v3 basketball league that has the best players in the WNBA. Okay, Caitlin Clark isn't in it yet, but uh, pretty much the best players in the WNBA are in it. And so she has an extremely high profile, especially over here. And Nafisa's story is also phenomenal, different from Pragnia's. Um, and so her story, in short, was that when we got in touch like 3 years ago, uh, she didn't know much about climate change. She just knew that what she had heard about it was terrifying to her. And she also knew that she wanted to be a mom she at some point. And she knew that from what she had heard that for her yet to be conceived child and all of that that generation, climate change was going to be devastating. So she wanted to learn about it. We got connected. One of the tools we provide is climate one-on-one sessions with the champions to help them overcome their fears so they'll speak out publicly. We did 2 sessions with Nafisa, and she went from knowing very little to now having been interviewed on BBC, ESPN, which is the big sports network here, NBC Sports, which is the network of the Olympics in the US, all other manner of media. And she's doing something that will be breaking next month, which I can't go into details of, but it's going to be quite a big thing. And P.S., she then became a mom, and uh, and after 10 weeks after giving birth, was playing in the WNBA again. So Nafisa Collier, incredible. And then I'll give you one more. His name is Rydian Cowley, and he is a race walker from Australia, three-time Olympian who won bronze in Paris. And Rydian uh, has been just such a great advocate uh, about the need for climate action in Australia and all over the world. And it became quite personal for him because at the 2023 World Championships in Budapest, Hungary, the heat was just overwhelming, and he suffered heat exhaustion, passed out in the middle of the race. And so since then, he has been, I mean, he was a great advocate before, and since then, he's put it into another gear, and he got the BBC's Green Sports World Athlete of the Year in 2024.
Oh, that's great, Lou. I mean, an amazing uh, ecosystem that you have created of eco athletes and these amazing athletes that you have from across the world. And I think they're doing an amazing job. And as you said, athletes, the cultural power that athletes have, I don't think any other institution or any other group of people today have in the global world. I mean, so if they speak about anything, I mean, even a small thing, that can really get amplified to the masses.
That's right. And what I say to people is, because most people go around their day, they're not thinking about this stuff. And so when we talk about it, I say, well, here's how it works, you know? So like in our normal day-to-day life, we get up, we have breakfast, we take a shower, whatever we do, we live life like this. But
Makes
when
sense.
we watch sports, we live life like this.
Definitely.
And that delta between this and this is magic. And how do you bottle that for good? In our case, climate action. That's what we're trying to bottle, that delta, basically.
Sure, that really makes sense. So we'll take one more question from the YouTube live. So I think Saikat, if you can take this. Yashika Chokse asks, how can COP agreements better incentivize industries like steel, cement, and energy to transition towards sustainable practices?
Really nice question, basically. First of all, we have to understand that COP doesn't binds anything. So all the agreements are kind of it's not mandated. It's kind of like, they have to do it in a way. So whenever we speak about any kind of agreements, those are drafted agreements, right? And generally, parties means the countries, or parties put their national policies to the agreements of public or private partnerships. So this is the way it works, right? So if I say about how companies like heavy emitting companies, you said, right, Prateek?
Steel and cement.
So mostly that I think my colleague, my friend Gurpreet already touched the space about the ESGs, right? So ESG is one of the part that they have to do this environmental social governance thing and governance things. And then of course they have proper parameters. So understand what is budgeting. We have a carbon budget. Every year we have a carbon budget for the entire world and for every nation, and it has been dispersed to every industries which are like really heavy emitting. So they have a perfect parameter. If those parameters are being breached out, so that means they have to do some kind of either offsetting or maybe carbon crediting, or buying carbon from different non-emitting resources or countries, where they can also, if one country is really developing and one country is developed, and the developing countries need a more more and for development needs cement and heavy embodied carbon materials, right? So when they try to increase their infrastructure, they will also increase their emissions, right? But they have their targets to be fulfilled. What they'll go to the countries where they have a lot of budget incurred, right? And they will buy from it. And how they'll buy, they'll like maybe volunteering aspect, or maybe in terms of money or any other projects that can be done, which has been helpful in both the ways. And then of course they can minimize the carbon as well. Secondly, and going towards the technological innovations, CCUS is there, which I also know that okay, it's under mechanism, under certain lesson learned, but still it is going on where we can like carbon capture storage utility units. By we can embody the carbon um, going on, and then how we can capture the carbon from the production house, from the supply chain, and then actually we can minimize the carbon into the storage. Thirdly, uh, there is a lot of you if you see scope one, scope two, scope three, greenhouse gas have like three scopes. If you see that, you have to minimize from the bottom from the bottom when you're using. If you're using a lot of energy, which is from coal itself, which is generated from the which is generated from the fossil fuels, you are increasing your emissions either ways. You have to see whether you can have a mix of energy, like maybe some sort of coal or maybe not coal. For the developing countries. For the developed countries, I would say like rather be into some kind of renewable and maybe one or two nuclear reactors for stabilizing the grid. So energy mix is the next answer for greater tomorrow. We need at least a safer safeguard for everything. Renewable capacity is, I think, 4,000 gigawatts right now in in the whole world. And um, as you said, the COP thing, and why I'm talking about the renewable energy capacity. See, the COP thing last in top 28, UAE gave us a threefold increase into the capacity of renewables. So that means we need two times whatever the capacity we have in 2000. So right now, we need to reach 11,000 by 2030. So that's our goal for the gigawatts. So that means COP did something, right? So COP actually shaped the whole was trajectory towards having the tapering down the nucleus. Nucleus. And nucleus, they increase the capacity building. How we can build the capacity, how we can go forward with certain kind of innovations and you know uh, skill developments in the nuclear. Because right now, world is ready for towards having some kind of technology without the safeguard. So we need technology like nuclear, but we also need some kind of safeguard behind that. So we need what we need. We need technological advances and R&Ds. R&Ds. Thank you. Secondly, the efficiency. So when we will increase the production house efficiency, like maybe from 2% to 4% or 1% at least, we will also minimize certain kind of emissions. And again, from COP28 UAE consensus, we got the efficiency that it has to be increased from 2% to 4% from this time, which is huge. So 2% of 10,000 gigawatts, you can imagine what would be the intensity. So it seems 2% or 4% small, but it's huge in terms of when we're talking about a whole aspect. In is more leaning towards more sustainability. How? See, there's two aspects. We need AI, of course, we know, but we also need side by side climate neutrality data centers where they have like reuse of heat usage, reuse of waste that has been developed. Also, advancing cooling technology. They need a lot of cooling, which can be advanced in terms of maybe enhanced energy efficiency or energy consumption. Last but not the least, which is I always emphasize on that part is demand side management. So what is the demand of that particular maybe the cement, maybe steel? What would be the demand? We can manage that in terms of managing the whole carbon emissions. So I'm not going too deep to the problem, just leveraging on the top that how we can manage those things. And yes, at the end, we need cement and steel, but also we need a proper supply chain, which is low carbon in itself. So that's my point of view.
Thank you so much. That's, I think, a great insight to the question. So, Amitabh, coming to you, if you could take us to your own personal journey and how it empowered you to create one of the largest nonprofits in India. And also, how does YUVA empower its students to create and contribute to a sustainable future?
Absolutely. Thank you, Prateek. By the way, this has been a fascinating panel discussion. And, the eco-athlete piece, I think, somewhere connects with all of us as well, especially with the Australian Open final going on right now. But, one thing that he mentioned, that Lou mentioned about the athletes wanting more capacity building before they became a climate leader, I think all of us also can continue to grow. And I think that's why places like COP29 are amazing places for us to grow and learn. Similarly, to answer your question, children. I have tremendous amounts of faith in children, for behavior change. If you can help them through smart classrooms about, teach them about SDGs, ESGs, where to throw the garbage, washing their hands after using the sanitation facilities, you know, stop closing the water faucets at the right time, planting trees, saying thank you to the Safai Karamcharis or the sweepers in the schools. I think all these things, if inculcated at an early age, can play a massive role. The importance of solar, importance of health and hygiene, good touch, bad touch, multiple things can be taught to kids. One example that, one memory I have strongly, which comes to my mind is um, I was going in my car and just out in Ahmedabad and went to one of the schools. And as I went to one of the schools, the bell rang. The school was about to complete. This was one of the schools where we had put in toilets and solar panels and water harvesting, and we had done a lot of trainings of the students about not throwing garbage outside, amongst other things. Uh, there are parents who had come to kind of receive the children. And this was a government school, so it's parents who make less than $3 a day. And all the kids came running out, looking to jump on the parents, give them a hug. One such kid, I think 7, 8 years old, Priya, as she ran out, she saw that her father was chewing tobacco and he threw a plastic wrapper of tobacco on the ground. So she went there first before giving him the hug, picked up the garbage, picked up the plastic wrapper, threw it in the garbage can nearby, and she told him, "Dad, clean India. You got to keep this clean." So and then gave him a hug. I think I'm pretty sure that kids don't only have the ability to change themselves, but also they are hope to change the elders around them as they start shaping up. So from my organization, from the 7,000 plus government schools where we have put in these different facilities like sanitation technology, also hundreds of our schools, the electricity bill is zero because of solar. Crores of liters of water has been saved through water harvesting. And through our content and curriculum to teach kids to be more sustainably at a young age, we see these kind of behavior changes, which always inspire us to keep on doing more and more. So I urge all of my friends from all over the world that I think it's extremely important to make this as a part of education in schools and ensure that the importance of climate change goes into their minds at an early age. Thanks.
Definitely, I think that's an amazing example that you gave, and the abilities of children to both get educated and also implement it, not just themselves, but also people in and around themselves. So that's an amazing example. If you could just touch on your personal journey on how you started YUVA.
Sure, sure. So I think all of us, always the dots connect looking backwards. Um, the story behind YUVA was that when I was 21, I made three best friends, Prateek: vodka, tequila, and margarita. And 50% of whatever money I was making working in Atlanta at a place called Hewitt Associates was going on this. So my typical Indian father said that, you've lost your track. Why don't you go for an MBA and you'll figure out the purpose or meaning in your life? So I quit my job and I got a full scholarship to Texas A&M for my MBA. And so I thought, why don't I go back to Ahmedabad, play tennis, hang out with my friends, eat dhokla, fafda, jalebi, and then I will go back for my MBA. On the flight, they were showing a movie called Swadesh. I suggest everyone to watch it. It's in subtitles as well. It's with Shah Rukh Khan, and it's a story of a NASA scientist from the US, from Indian origin, who comes back to meet his nanny in a village and doesn't go back to NASA. He decides to work for improving electricity and water in the village. So I saw that movie, and as soon as I landed, I told my mom, I was 21, and Mom, we need to go and find Kamalaba, who was my nanny, who would chase me with a glass of milk, put oil in my hair, bathe me as a baby. And I was like, I wonder where she is. And near Nirma University here, there's a village called Gota, and Kamalaben was living there. So we went straight there, and underneath a large tree, she was sitting, 82 years old. She only weighed 28 kgs. She was skin and bones, Prateek. And the first thing she said when she saw me was, now that you are here, son, I can die easily. And I said, why? I asked, why do you say that? And she told me, because my son said, I'm going to take you on vacation. Because, she said, that my son said, I'm going to take you on vacation, but he's kind of brought me here, when he took me out from your house, and we get, he's making me do all the cooking and cleaning in the house. He gets drunk and beats me for dinner. Sometimes he gives me tobacco because when you keep chewing, it creates a false illusion that you have eaten. So I was like, oh my God. So to make a long story short, I said, you can't live here anymore. I brought her to my place. In about 2 weeks, she put on about 2-3 kgs. And then I dropped her to an old age home with a very heavy heart, and decided that I'll take some volunteers with me to go and cheer up the elderly who live there. In India, the old age homes are places where when you are above 60, there's no one there to take care of you. For about $10 a month, you get free meal and some medical support. So Prateek, as we started going there to spend time with the elderly, entire volunteer movement emerged, where people said, we are ready to give 2 hours a week to go to orphanages, to go to Handicapped Children Association, to go to help the blind, to go to government schools and teach math, science, dance, music, English. That's how the journey started. And I remember, I'll wrap it up by, I remember telling my mom that, Mom, I don't plan on going to the US. I was 21. And the first thing she said was, you're not doing charity with my money. You first become 60, you become a billionaire, and then you can think about these things. I was like, Mom, too late. And then she's like, well, you have a non-refundable airline ticket. I was like, well, it's okay. And then she's like, well, your brother's going to graduate from Harvard and he'll drive a Rolls Royce and you'll be riding around in a bicycle. I was like, well, bicycle will keep me fit. And if there's a Rolls Royce, I'll ride that as well. And Prateek, you of all people have started a whole movement out of bicycles with your sister. Ek Beti Ek Cycle is something I request all of you to go and check out, the incredible work that Prateek's doing. But, and then she said, well, who's going to want to marry you? And I joked and I said, well, Mom, who's been happy after getting married? But now I'm married to Mrs. India, who's a big support system in the Seva we do. So, one thing led to another. I did not go back to the US and start this volunteer movement, as I said earlier, and it scaled up to 150,000 volunteers. We had all the major corporates sending their employees there to come and teach kids. And then, because in India, we have a law called corporate social responsibility, where 2% of net profits you give to charity, they started funding the work so that we could bring in climate change initiatives and education initiatives in the government schools and improve them. So that's been a fun journey, and it's been 21 years. I started when I was 21, now I'm 42, and the vision is to keep doing this to the last breath. And my co-founders they were 14 and 15 years old when they started. So I think there's definitely been a divine design into all of this as well. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you so much. That's an amazing work that you're doing at YUVA. And I mean, really inspiring. I mean, that you're affecting and changing millions of kids' life across the country, and also doing it in a sustainable and a green way. That's amazing. Okay, so Anum, I know you have, you have some commitment after this, so I'll just ask you one last question. So how can adaptation strategies ensure inclusivity, particularly for marginalized and indigenous communities, which again, in a country as large as Pakistan, there are hundreds of, tens of millions of such communities there?
Yeah, thank you, Prateek. But before I answer the question, I must say again from my side as well that thank you for organizing this and bringing us all together here. I met a few people there in COP, and now today, while everyone's sharing their journey and experience, I feel like it's really something that one can take back and then learn from each other. So I feel like it's a great platform, not just to discuss sustainability, but overall each other's journey and how one can do better in their moving forward in their journey or work ahead. So yeah, thank you for this. And now coming towards the question. So basically, when you talk about marginalized communities or indigenous communities, happens often is that they face some systematic barriers, which could include either limited access to decision-making powers in general. So this is where these adaptation strategies basically come in, and they basically should be designed to help those communities or individuals to, when we talk about, let's say, climate change, so it should just adjust to the impact of climate change, and they should just try to aim to reduce the vulnerability, the increase, they should increase resilience, and also it just should try to manage those risks which are caused by climate change. So let's say, for example, as I work in the development sector organization, and and overall in general, even I feel like these adaptation strategies should talk more about community-led approach, where you're giving the ownership to the community, you're engaging these marginalized or these indigenous communities from the outset to co-create such solutions which are tailored to their needs, right? And you have to ensure that there's involvement which kind of like brings in policy or the work that you're doing. It should be more aligned to their cultural practices and their social dynamics, because once you do that, it will be a more long-term sustainable approach. It's going to stick there. People are going to own that, right? For example, I'll give you an example here would be, for what we're doing under one of the projects is that we're building some houses after the flood-affected communities in Balochistan with different ethnicities, people coming in from different indigenous backgrounds as well. But because the project has a more of a community-led approach to it, we are not just going in ground and doing needs assessment and all, but including the people, trying to know what their cultural practices are, how does it work, what are the needs of the people, what are the needs of the women, the elderly, the indigenous society, other parts, and keeping that in mind, moving ahead and then building a project out of it. We know that now the community has more ownership to it. They are completely involved in the work, and it's just going to be like long-term sustainable approach which is going to stay there for long, right? So I feel like here, to design such initiatives where community would take the lead, would community would identify those risks for you, and then it will eventually lead to the local ownership and relevance, could be one way to have adaptation strategy. The next thing that could work out in this case in indigenous or marginalized communities could be the social protection systems. We have some in Pakistan. It should be something that establishing those social safety systems where you have a vulnerable society like women or so the elderly, either supporting them through some cash transfer programs which account for climate change or climate vulnerabilities, and this would help them through immediate recovery or long-term adaptation for these marginalized groups. And this would just be like more of provide those gender sensitive, keeping those things in mind as well. So a social protection system would always be a good strategy to ensure that these marginalized societies or communities are helped. And then, of course, capacity building and skill development is a very important aspect on its own, where you are investing in in these communities, you're training them, you're creating more awareness in terms of disaster preparedness, sustainable development. It could be climate resilience, how climate smart, approach to agriculture or whatever their means or livelihood source could be. So that's where you build their, capacity. You train them, you aware them, and then you involve them, the women, the youth. They take the leadership roles here, and then it could lead towards more long-term resilience, right? And then of course the government can also play a very important part here, where you could just like try to come up with policies which advocate towards marginalized and indigenous groups in society, and they represent in those climate governance bodies, and you work towards strengthening the institutional capacities within the government system to try to mainstream those inclusive adaptation planning at national level, at local level, and all. So you're basically trying to build people and trying to bring that within the policy of the government as well, to ensure that the community's needs and requirements are in line with what with the plan that the government is also bringing on board. So overall, yes, I believe like these are some of the things that need to be kept in mind. And here, communities which are like actually being impacted are actually the marginalized and indigenous communities under the climate change, because they're often overlooked. And through some of these approaches, I feel like one can definitely, one way or the other, ensure that they're taken into account.
Yeah, so that's a great insight, Anum, and thank you so much for joining us. I know you have some commitment right now, so it was great having you on the panel. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. I really had a great time. See you.
So, Saikat, coming to you, given the recent rollbacks in climate targets for some of the major powers, how do you think developing countries, and especially a country like India, can adapt their energy transition so that they ensure greater self-reliance?
Well, first of all, as everyone said, and you can see the panelists as well, we have to drive the change from grassroots level, right? So we have to start including the community, not just from community like regional basis, from sub-regional basis. This is how we can involve any policies. If we don't know exactly what the community wants, if we don't know what exactly uh, they really want, what is the point of getting some kind of policies which will be driven towards the national, but they don't want the policy actually. So at the end, when you measure the impact, so every policy has to be measured by the impact, which is the whole place of the policy. So then you'll see that there is a decline, but also strategic, you can say saturation in the link of policies, we want a gradual growth, right? So when there will be a bottom to top leverage, this is the what the India wants right now. So just for a context, I've been working with the government of India for like I used to work with the government of India for like nearly 5 to 6 years. If you heard about Vidyalaya Yojana, the Gramin Vidyalaya Yojana, if you heard about Saubhagya scheme, if you heard about Har Ghar Bijli scheme, every schemes was started by us, and we are so pleased and to be a part of those kind of schemes. In fact, the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan also started by us in the sense like I was working in one of the Navratna and we took the whole projects for that. During those projects, in fact, the solar rooftop project for government buildings also started by our team. So during every, why I told about those projects, when we worked in those projects, we worked basically with the marginalized community and the community where they don't have electricity, they don't have toilets. Many schools doesn't have, many school doesn't have any toilets. There is even no schools and hospitals, no electricity, nothing. Step by step, we did a lot of projects, remote villages, really, like, to go beyond those capacities. Like in India, you see that there is a lack of approach roads. Right? There's no road as well in many villages. They don't connect with cities as well. So getting the equipments and getting the whole operation from one part to other part, it was challenges, and every government really helped us. We carried transformers, we carried huge machineries, and and the engineers who were working, crossing through the rivers, and and they gave us a lot of solutions on the spot, literally a lot of solutions on the spot, and they know a lot of things which we don't know. Just working on beside the top, and we are working on the Excel sheet, they don't have any solution. If you are working on the ground with the people, by the people, then you'll understand what exactly the people are asking for and where exactly the lag is behind. So you don't have to bridge the gap. So India needs to bridge the gap. Basically, India needs to bridge the communication between normal community, the marginalized community, into the government. Right? Secondly, if you see the trajectories, if you see the policies, government is doing a lot of work. Yes, of course, but there is a lot of gap, and those gap has to be fulfilled first, and then come up with the second policies or the other policies, right? So if we have a tons of policies, then every policy have certain kind of gap, that makes no sense. So my proposition would be, if you see the TIs, the long-term plans, if you see the efficiency has a lot of policies as well. Certain gaps are there in terms of financing, in terms of how the subsidies can roll back. There is smart metering that has been evolved. There's also a problem with the financing of RESCO modeling. So if they can first minimize the gap between the policies that we already exist, then it would be easier. And the youth, oh, India has amazing youth. Right? I think the most youth in the entire world, using and not using, I would say the word like leveraging them, including them into proper decision making, or at least into a proper stakeholder management, it would be amazing. Amazing. I remember that I shared with the um, I guess one of the directors of UN, and we were literally trying to say that youth is not just a tick box, right? Because most of the organizations, most of the events, and policymaker only make those things as a tick box. So don't make youth as a tick box. Rather, just go and do the work. You'll see the benefit of those youth energy into the whole arena of outputs. So that's my outtake from India. Like two, three simple things, not going too much broad. Involve stakeholders, include of the youth, and also like to know exactly in the grassroots level what they want.
Yeah, I think that is very important, definitely. Thank you so much. So, Gloria, I think in the recent decade or so, there has been a growing awareness amongst even global leaders that indigenous practices and local farming practices are important, and they have been resilient for so many thousands of years. So, how do you think we can, in terms of global policy, incorporate that so that we are able to build a sustainable and resilient food system?
Thank you, Prateek. I think first I want to begin by saying, yeah, it is already out there, but also as indigenous communities, you're also facing the attack back of it is not necessary. I think even in COP29 last year, attending it, China was highlighting, for example, there's no need of adopting indigenous practices in this century. So I think that should be a starting point for us. We need to acknowledge that indigenous knowledge is one that has been it represents centuries of ecological understanding and adaptive practices that are really in harmony with the environment. So if we really, that is the first stepping stone, that it is vital in this process as we talk about it. So the beginning point for this is let us incorporate, let us be harmony in accepting that there's need to integrate indigenous practices in the global policy policies, sorry. So by ensuring that we incorporate these policies into it, then it will be better if at the global level it's already appreciated. It trickles down, for example, from COP29 into countries adopting it into their national policies and then down to the grassroots levels. The second thing we need to ensure this is through partnerships, that collaborations with researchers and the indigenous people, where when researchers and the local people come together, bringing joint initiatives that really analyze the importance of traditional feeding, giving back to them, and what are the successful outcomes out of it, then it also gives them a upper hand on really recognition of this indigenous knowledge. Then secondly, another thing that we need to put into place is advocacy and awareness. If we don't put it out there why it is important, then we can't. And one of the ways that we can do this is through educational campaigns, where we put out there what are the successful traditional food systems practices from the indigenous communities that are so well noted. And then now people become more and more aware that, yeah, this is something that can be adopted. I can tell you an example of my own community where we have whether traditional, like they can foretell about them weather, what is coming up, if it is a very prolonged drought season, if it's about flooding coming up, and people are like, how did they even know that? When did I think, for example, the other time people are like, there's no flooding, is not coming, people are just saying, and then flooding came, and for them it was so effective. Now, how do even researchers work closely with these traditional people, for example, in weather forecasting, and help us into saying during this period, do not plant these crops, or during this period you need to plant more in preparation for the drought season. And then another thing that we need to appreciate, look into, is let us establish mechanisms for monitoring and evaluating the programs of indigenous people. There are lots of people maybe out there who are trying to do things, but they really do not, it's because of their traditional knowledge. So let us see, let us have mechanisms where you can highlight this one went well based on the traditional. Of course, there is incorporating this traditional practices into the modern agricultural practices, then bring it out, which one are successful. Also working closely with the indigenous people, where you get feedback from them and then improve on projects on based on their feedbacks. So when this becomes more better, awareness is increased and people get to know its importance, integrating the policies into the global forums. And also another thing, we need to have more indigenous people on these policies that involves food security. I always say one thing, you cannot say that you are addressing climate action when the main people who live near the forest are the indigenous people. Forests are like the lungs of our earth, and that is what all of us are trying to protect on. Without this forest, even the water that we're trying to becomes low if we don't take care of it. And then in the long run, food security is affected. So I think that is another thing that we really need to look into as climate action, people in all means too. And yeah, if we really do that, then global policies will be so accommodative for everyone, and we'll have sustainable and food systems that are resilient for every one of us.
Definitely, I think that's a great point, Gloria. I just want to check on, is Gurpreet still online with us? I don't think he is. Okay. So we'll move to Sakshi. So Sakshi will now come to a local issue, but that gets highlighted globally. I mean, that's the Delhi air pollution. It's such a big global topic. I mean, but of course, the residents of NCR definitely feel it, especially in the winter months. So given the recent Supreme Court ruling of right to clean air in Delhi, how do you think policymakers and even citizens can actually move ahead and ensure that lasting and tangible benefit?
The recent Supreme Court ruling sort of reiterates the belief of people in the judiciary to uphold the right to clean air, which is like the fundamental right included in the right to life. While it sounds very powerful on paper, the challenge lies with such a huge country like India. The challenge lies in the implementation, given its historical the history, but beyond been the challenge. And the stakeholders, including the governments, industries, and citizens, sort of need that help from the government and also at the legislative level to sort of shift that from defensive arguments to come up with proactive collaboration. For example, if governments at the center and state levels they have to bridge political divides and implement region-wide policies for air quality improvement. Because for a city like Delhi, the action should be at 10x. For a city like, I'm not quite sure which has the lowest amount of air pollution considering the situation today, but in any other city in India that does not require that accelerated action, may not require that much of efforts put into air pollution, rather put in resources into some other issue. So it has to be divided and assessed based on region and its requirements. And also like initiatives with unified public transport systems, investments in clean energy, and also to make vehicle emission norms more strict, which is essential. And the industries now can adapt its into self-regulatory mechanisms and move towards clearer technologies. For citizens, I understand that it's asking a lot considering there's a lot of gap between the socio and economic and the climate injustice that is happening, especially in countries from the global south. But from a citizen perspective, awareness campaigns on how everyday habits and everyday lifestyle, like burning waste or overuse of their vehicles, impact air quality can also drive the behavioral shift that we are expecting an individual to take. And most importantly, I think there needs to be an independent monitoring system. uh, I cannot be held accountable for my daily practices. But at the local, national, and regional level, if you establish a clear independent monitoring mechanism to hold each one of these institutions and stakeholders accountable, I think we can achieve air quality improvements and other climate improvements that we all strive to see. And technology like real-time pollution tracking and an enforcement body with sort of to act on violations can ensure sustainable impact. The goal with law is to sort of ensure that there aren't loopholes for people, stakeholders, especially corporations, to take advantage of and leave out on environmental assessments. But it sort of helps empower communities, it sort of empowers institutions and stakeholders to come up with ideas and solutions that tie all of this together to create a more sustained impact. And the goal will always be to create a collaborative ecosystem where clean air isn't just a legal right that is put on paper and announced in the top court of India, but it has to be recognized that it is a lived reality.
I think that, thank you so much. I think that's a great insight. Lou, coming to you, what are you looking forward in this year, 2025, from EcoAthletes, and also in the near future, the plans and goals that you have?
Great questions. So for 2025, we have two big initiatives. One is around working or showing the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, and LA28, the host organization of the 2028 Olympics, Summer Olympics, that is, that that the athletes of the world expect those organizations, which are doing very good things as it relates to environmental sustainability, to go even further, what we would say go faster, higher, stronger, which is those are the words of the Olympic motto on climate. So we're building a kind of a groundswell of support among our athletes, our EcoAthletes champions, and we're going to reach out to other environmental athlete groups and to bring this to the attention of the people who are putting together the 2028 Olympics. You might think, well, that's a long way off, but it really isn't. So that's one thing. And then the other big thing is a competition that for the first 2 years of its existence, an annual competition has been US focused solely. And it's something, but this year we're going to expand it to be global. And so it's still going to be based in the US around US college sports called the EcoAthletes Collegiate Cup. And it's a competition led by the EcoAthletes champions on on any college campus in the United States where we have at least one champion. So right now that's 25. And some of the most well-known kind of big sports schools like Notre Dame and um, uh, Stanford and schools of that caliber are represented. And so what happens is there's a company called Climate Games. They gamify climate action via an app. It's based in London. And so the EcoAthletes Collegiate Cup is a game on the Climate Games app. And you can sign up for any one of those 25 schools that we have. And the champions at each of those campuses ask their teammates, invite their teammates, I should say, and their friends who aren't athletes and their family and anyone else they know to sign up for the Notre Dame team or the uh, the University of Northern Arizona team or the Rutgers University team in New Jersey. And then they're encouraged to exercise. And that exercise, if you have a wearable, it gets directly logged into your team on Climate Games, or you can manually enter it. And that exercise is turned into an environmental currency, which buys carbon offsets, which we know have some offsets are not legitimate and others are really beneficial. The first 2 years we did um, methane capture, which actually a methane capture project in Turkey we helped to fund. And so basically the idea is exercise more, which is a good thing, right? and then less carbon gets leached out into the atmosphere. Well, this year we have a sponsor. I can't say who it is because it's not been announced to the public. So that's going to expand the amount of carbon that we can remove. So we are inviting our college student EcoAthletes champions to invite all of the rest of our EcoAthletes champions who are all over the world, like Pragnia, um, like Ridian, who I spoke of earlier in Australia, have nothing to do with US college sports. The champions are going to recruit those foreign champions to sign up for their school. And then Pragnia would invite her friends and her friends to join whichever team she signs up for. And so it's going to be a global event that's centered around US college sports, and the college or university that removes or keeps the most carbon out of the atmosphere wins the Collegiate Cup. The first 2 years, uh, Clemson won it thanks to a rower from Clemson. She was incredible. Prateek, she would ask people she would run into on the street who she didn't know to sign up. And it got such a notoriety that she won a Billie Jean King Youth Leadership Award for her work in the Collegiate Cup. So those two things are our biggest two things.
Okay, and that's something really to look forward to this year.
Oh, wait, I want to say one thing.
Yeah.
The Collegiate Cup competition runs from March 10th to April 22nd, which is Earth Day. So through Prognia, you may be encouraged to run, ride your bike, swim, play tennis, whatever it might be, and whatever university she signs up for. And I'm going to encourage her to sign up for Rutgers University because that's my alma mater, but whatever. Go RU. And so you'll get into better shape and you'll be helped. Oh, because this year's project is coral restoration. We're going to be restoring coral reefs in places where they have been greatly damaged. And that has a huge carbon impact and also a huge biodiversity impact.
Makes sense. That's great, and I'll definitely look forward to actually participating in it and inspiring other people also to join that.
Yeah,
Definitely.
you'll get in better shape.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a great initiative, and it's great that you're making it global now, not just confining it to US. Thank you so much. So I think it has been a great discussion. I'll just come to people now, all our panelists, for a final statement of what do you look forward to this year, both, I mean, in terms of your personal capacity, in your professional capacity, and what do you expect from COP30 that will happen in Belém, Brazil later in November. So Saikat, we'll start with you.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. That was an amazing discussion. Learn from everyone. Amazing speakers, amazing initiatives. People are doing great in their own life and as well as making some kind of changes in others. I really, really admire that. A lot of things are great for COP30, definitely. Like Road to Belém, what exactly it is. Till now, we are on a gloomy path. Secondly, NCQG, it has to be more streamlined how it can be done. Last year, we've seen a particular dramatic displacement in just transition program and also in terms of UN conferences, which was not maybe this year we can find some kind of common ground. Happy that Article 6 is operationalized, or at least being operationalized by authorization and certain credits. Most important is this year we will see the NDCs, the National Determined Contribution, which will be submitted by every nations. And by February, I think 28th of February, I guess every parties or every nation should submit their NDCs. And then it will be go through as a it's called efficiency transparency reporting, which is transparency reporting, which is the ETF, which will be backed by the reporting of biennial reportings. So there will biennial transparency reporting, BTRs and ETFs, which is really important. How so those two reportings are based on what are the nations or the parties concluded in the indices, and is there a gap between the GST and the indices that have been provided previously and right now, and the long-term plans that has been given by those parties. So they will go through a transparency framework. So this year, I guess the ETF and DTI is most important in terms of indices. So let's see what happens in COP30 Brazil. But yes, we are excited as it is Brazil. Like we will got to see in the indigenous communities. We'll see a lot of people over there. So it's gonna be fun. We also have the SBs, which is called the subsidiary body 62 meeting in Bonn. I don't know about June. So there are a lot of discussions in SBTI, which is the subsidiary body for implementations and research innovation. So let's see what happens. But yeah. Overall, long story short, thank you so much for the meeting panels, and happy Republic Day to you and all of the viewers from India as well. Really happy to do this kind of panel in this amazing day, like a very proudful day of us. So yeah, thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you so much for joining, Saikat, and that too on a Republic Day here in India. Sure. So, Gloria, your last thoughts and what you look forward this year to?
Thank you so much, Prateek. I think for me, what I expect now more in COP30 is us moving now from just commitments and organizations in country, like all this moving from commitment and to concrete actions now. I also expect more representation of marginalized communities and more vulnerable sectors in this coming COP30, and also more youth voices in this, and especially on the food security sector. I would expect maybe increased more finances around this side, more increased mitigation and adaptation talks that will be geared towards like actions that now are allowed to speak louder other than just commitments and like the previous COPs. Yeah, thank you. And it's been really an engaging discussions, hearing inspiring stories like Amitabh and all the panelists here. It's been really engaging, and I look forward into seeing more and engaging onto these discussions in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gloria. Again, you're joining us from Edinburgh, where it's still morning right now. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for insights that you bring on board in such a sector that is not often discussed in such panels often. Thank you so much. So, Sakshi, I'd like to bring you in, and I'll also like to understand from you not just the climate COP, but also the biodiversity COP, which is also resuming its talks again in February. So what do you look forward from them?
Yeah, with respect to the resumed climate biodiversity discussions, I'd expect them to be nothing short of agreeing biodiversity fund goal, which is made accessible to communities and countries that actually require the funding. And like Gloria mentioned, it's just not about commitment talk anymore. It also brings more scope for action-oriented initiatives and funding young people and promoting more solutions that can uplift the ideas in terms of conservation for biodiversity and ocean as well. Because oftentimes ocean conservation is sort of left out of discussions and funding and mentorships and all sorts of administrative support. So I'd like to see more on that. And in terms of the climate COP that is happening in Brazil, I'd like to see how it is made more accessible to have young people at Brazil, considering it's in Latin America and most of the countries from the global south might not be able to access it that easily without accelerated funding. So I also did hear that the size of the COP will be shrunk even further than the last COP. I'd like that for not to be true, because it's important that young people are there and people who are affected are there and have a say at what discussions are going on and have a say on how the negotiations are impacted. So I think it's really important that people are there. And overall, I think better access for funding, better access for mentorship and youth training, and all sorts of capacity building and advocacy training sessions have to be accelerated at the global south grassroots levels.
Oh, thank you so much. That's again a great insight that you bring. Lou, would you like to chip in some of your last thoughts, particularly not just, not just eco athletes, but sustainability and climate action in general?
Well, sure. You guys might have heard that we had a presidential election here. And so, you know, our work got harder. There's no question about it. And it, we can cry about it. Or we can just accept it and kind of lie back. And this is me talking. I can't speak for the organization. We are a nonpartisan organization. But all I can say is, and this is just me speaking, but also I know, and speaking for my world, eco athletes and beyond, we are not going to. We know it's harder, but just like, and this is going to be very cliche, but like in a sports event, when you're behind or the headwinds are strong, you got to fight back. And so that's where our main hashtag climate comeback comes in. And so just know that there is a strong, there's a strong force in the United States that is going to move even faster, higher, stronger on climate, even with the headwinds that we are dealing with. And I wish it wasn't the case, but it is. But that's reality, and we are going to work faster, higher, stronger, and smarter to make sure that we don't fall back.
I think that's the last great motivation. I mean, irrespective of the reality, one has to definitely fight back. That is how we'll be able to do something collectively in the for our planet Earth. That's the only planet that we have. So I
Yes,
think,
and we have another election in 2 years, and not presidential, but and other elections even this year, and there will be action to try and counteract what is coming down the pike. So just know that don't bet on, don't bet against the US long term. We will be there. We may be slower than we need to be, but we will be there, at least if we have anything to say about it.
I think that's good to hear. Even in COP29, that was just it started 3 days after the presidential election of US. The looming Trump presidency loomed over the entire COP, and countries were acting. I mean, both countries which wanted to take action and which they really didn't want to take action, they were taking clues from the election that happened in US. So, I mean, US definitely, I mean, whatever happens in US definitely has a global, results globally. So, I mean, that is a very important thing that we have to, and that's great to hear that there are definitely people like you and the entire community in US which definitely won't take this lying down, will fight back and will ensure that US is definitely fighting the good fight. So thank you everyone. I will definitely like thank all our amazing panelists, Lou, Sherry, who are joining from US in early morning of Sunday, Saikat, Gloria, who are joining us from UK, Anum, who joined us from Pakistan, and Amitabh, Gurpreet, and Sakshi, who joined us from India. Thank you so much for joining. It's an important day in India. Today is the Republic Day of India. So thank you everyone, and thank you XLRI and the Peace Committee at XLRI for making this happen. I'd like to just now give back to my host. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so thanks everyone. I think it was a wonderful discussion that we had today, and we talked about so many different subjects. We had a diverse set of panelists, and we could get a 360-degree perspective on the entire aspect of climate action and sustainability. And thank you, Prateek, for orchestrating the entire thing. It was superb. And most importantly, we had a lot of learnings from everyone, and hope we can incorporate as B school students these ideas, because we are planning to become future leaders. And some of these things we can take up and make a better future. So thanks everyone.
I would request everyone to just turn on their cameras, let's say for a virtual selfie for this event. Thank you. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.